Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good. So yourself?
I am very well. I'm very excited to jump back into Chinatown. A film I have not watched for a very long time.
Yep.
Um,
Since I have as well.
yeah. I think you suggested this one.
Yep.
I know it's been on your radar for a while because you've thought about it a couple of times in the past. This one, it's been around when we've talked about suggestions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we finally did. This was a film not in the kind of, obviously not in the effects department as we talked about Jurassic Park, but in a similar way, I wondered whether this film would hit as hard watching it now.
Yeah.
And it absolutely did. It's just as hard hitting as it was when I originally watched it.
It's still a punch in the face, this movie. It really is.
God, yeah. But so well crafted, and it takes you on such a great journey to get to that point.
Yeah.
When did you first see Chinatown? Because
I don't remember exactly
Same.
when.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I don't remember how I saw this at all. I'm going to just say it was TV. I think. But
Yeah, I think it was a late night TV, and I think I was probably about 12, 13.
Yeah.
And I was seriously not prepared for this movie.
No. Well, no, you know, you're not. Like,
And the thing is that I'd grown up watching westerns and film noir with my granddad, so I was like,
you were aware of the style.
What more can you ask for? It's Jack Nicholson in a detective movie, and I watched it and I remember thinking I'm not sure I was equipped for that movie. And I also think at the time I'd watched a couple of 70s movies that were all similarly fatalistic in there, because the 70s seemed, I think, because it was the end of the sort of Hays Cody stuff. They could finally do whatever the fuck they wanted, with their movies. In the 70s, there's an abundance of very
bleak,
hard movies that don't end
and bleak.
happily.
I mean,
yes.
I think I was thinking just now as you said that, because I recently rewatched Silent Running. And
God, yeah.
And obviously that's not an 18 or a 15 or anything like that.
No.
But it's fucking so bleak. You get to the end, you're like, oh my God, yeah, this is... the 70s really were that decade of like, yeah, we don't need a happy ending.
Yeah,
It's
and
fine.
I'd similarly watched, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, which is, again, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's got... Stuff happens that you're like, this just... You don't expect, it's especially with that one. The what does happen? You're like, no, you can't do that to me. What are you doing? What? No, and I think it's at the time I think it was a couple of. I mean, it wasn't so far when I was like 13. It wasn't that far removed from the 70s. It was only like mid to late 80s. So
yeah,
but still, 80s movies tend to be a lot happier than
which is saying something, because a lot of the 80s ones
exactly,
can be quite bleak, but
they do tend to have slightly happier endings than the 70s seem to. The 70s definitely seem to be a lot more fatalistic.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm going to say the same as you. I think I saw this on TV probably around the same age, 13, 14, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And like you, I mean, I wasn't prepared for the ending. This film's quite gritty, and Jack Nicholson gets beat up a lot, and a lot of bad things happen to him, but none of that prepares you for where this film ends up.
No.
I don't think, anyway, because I think there's that very YouTubed meme, well, not memed, but YouTubed clipped event in the middle of the movie, with his nose, right? But nothing prepares you for the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it as we go through it. So, first of all, I love they stuck with the noir 30s style opening titles.
Totally,
full titles at the start, full cast at the start.
And,
yes.
It's got that real, Maltese Vulcan-y type feel to it, hasn't it? It's
it does do the full credits at the start. the classic title cards, it looks like a 30s movie. It's awesome. They did a really good job of nailing that, I think. And it instantly puts you in that frame of mind, that noir.
Yeah, I think it's totally. I think that's why they did it that way. Mm-hmm. It's almost to make you go, "Oh, I know where I am."
Yes, instantly.
You think, I know where I'm going to be in this movie, and you're not.
But, no. But it's good setup, and I love the journey you go on in this movie is awesome. Mm-hmm. So we open on 1937 Los Angeles, and we meet the private investigator Jake Gates, or some of them call him Gitz, and then he's like Gettys.
The thing about that is Gettys, isn't it?
They constantly get it wrong.
Houston, in particular, keeps getting it wrong, and apparently they went with it because it makes him even more of a cock. But apparently Houston just couldn't get it right. So it was actually, there's a number of things in this movie that you think are planned and are not as planned as you think. But we'll get to the other ones later.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, right off the bat, as we're introduced to Jake, I love this opening because it really you learn a lot about Jake's personality at the start of the movie as opposed to the end of the movie. In these opening moments, he's basically a private detective or a private investigator. He has recently been spying on someone's wife.
Yep.
And that someone, played wonderfully by Bert, he is beside himself. He sees these photos, and he is crushed.
The noises he makes are amazing.
Yeah, it's
whimpering. It's like, oh my god.
He's very good at that. I always remember he did that in Rocky as well when he was falling over in the snow. Was it Rocky 2? Something like that. He did very similar.
I think it's 2.
Similar noises. But you see Jake here, and he has fucking no sympathy for this guy. And the guy is just crushed, and he's just like he just wants him to move the hell out, get out of the office.
He says, "You can't eat the blinds. I only had them installed on Wednesday."
yeah. And then of course he meets Evelyn Mulray, or who he believes is Evelyn, who wants him to spy on her husband. Yeah. Now, and then immediately Jake is like, "Hey, look, you don't want to know. Just trust me. It's better if you just shut up."
Yeah, he says,
and don't get involved.
Do you know the expression "let sleeping dogs lie"?
And it's one of the things I love is that in these moments when he is talking to Evelyn Mulray, he's saying to her, "Let sleeping dogs lie."
Yep.
You don't want to get involved. You don't want to stir the pot because you don't want to find out the truth. You don't want to know the truth, right? And he tells her that very coldly at the start of this movie. And by the end, he has not taken his own advice and he has become involved. And he is the one that ultimately has ended up putting himself in that exact position that he's warning her against.
One of the things I like about how they've set up him and how his character is he's not your typical noir detective, because I think your typical noir detective is usually down at heel. They're usually
burnt out, drinking.
They're usually bedraggled, and he is not like that.
He's relatively successll.
White suit. He's got this like fancy office. He's got competent employees.
Yeah.
He's not your usual thing, and even there's a thing he does that I really like is he keeps using slang, or he's vulgar, and then he sees what he's done and he sort of tries to reel it back.
Yes, yeah,
he
does
doing that, and it sort of shows that he's actually, he's pretending to be, sort of civil. He's not. Underneath, he's a rough sort of, working class guy, but he's pretending to be. I'm sorry about that.
It's almost like he wasn't prepared for the level of success he's managed. And he's kind of, his roots are still very much there. and he occasionally lets it slip, and he has to kind of hide it and be like, "Oh no, actually, no, I'm this successful PI now. I have to, I have to behave as such."
And one of the things I also like is one of his men is what's his name? Bruce Glover, who's the father of Crispin Glover.
I did not know that.
And when you look at him, you think
you can kind of see it now. You've said it.
You can see it, can't you? It's like, okay.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that, but now that you've said it, I can see that. So anyway, Evelyn, basically wants Jake to spy on Hollis Mulray, who is the chief engineer for the city's water department. And so
not just not just his usual schmoes, it's like a known person.
Yeah, and his staff are like, wait, you mean Hollis Mulray? Like, because they know who he is, and they're like, oh, okay, this is not just some dude who's cheating on his wife. This is like someone important in the city, and someone with notoriety. So we get Jake basically saying like, don't do it. Don't do it. But she's insistent. She's like, no, I want you to do this. So he ends up going to this, I think it's like a town council meeting, right?
Yeah.
And I love how disinterested he is until the goats turn up. Like the goats turning up is like the best thing that happened to him that day, because he is bored senseless by this discussion that's going on. And effectively you've got this situation where they're suggesting one course of action, and Hollis is like, this is I think Hollis is the one that's like, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah,
like,
so
I'm not willing to do this.
They want him to build a dam.
Yeah,
and previously in the 20s there was a dam that was built, and
didn't he sanction that one, or he was okay with that one and it was a disaster, so he's not willing to do it again?
It broke, and I think 400 people killed, and that's a real thing in Hollywood that really happened.
Well, isn't this whole story is loosely based around
on Mulholland?
Yeah,
the guy whose name Mulholland Drive is named after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was so that the whole thing is loosely based on real events,
and then there's this kind of woven story around it.
Sort of names are changed, and events are out of sync with reality, but they're all very, just enough truth to be actually the real thing.
So
the farmer that comes in,
he's great.
That's Ron Howard's dad.
Oh, okay.
Just stupid little things, but I like those little things I like.
He's fantastic. So this guy doesn't, for context, this guy doesn't just come in with a load of goats for no reason. He comes in and he's basically like, you are stealing the water that is keeping my farm going, feeding, watering my goats. They've got nowhere to go. You're stealing the water and you're sending it over there, and you're basically destroying our businesses and our livelihoods. What are you going to do about it? And that's why he's brought the goats there. He's like, well, you look after them then. What are you going to do about these goats? Where are you going to put them? But yeah, as I said, Jake just loves this. He's like, the smile on his face when they come in is like, it's brilliant. Although I must confess, if I was at a really dry meeting, although I don't think the meeting's that dry, I think it's quite an interesting thing anyway, but he's obviously not interested.
He doesn't give a fuck, does he? He's basically there just to sort of get a measure of him, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's judging. He's trying to like see the kind of person he is, I think.
Yeah.
As he kind of watches him, and we see basically that Jake then does end up following Mulray, and he's spending quite a lot of time looking at like dry riverbeds and water outlets, and Jake at one point Jake almost gets covered in water as the outlet is it kind of flushes at night, doesn't it, in the evening, and he's like he's after photographing him, and he's like chilling out right next to the outlet, and I'm not sure that was a very sensible thing to do anyway. But yeah,
and all these shots, there's a prevailing thing of the shots in this that are mostly from either his perspective or over his shoulder. It's like it's almost like a third person game. It's
a lot of it is, absolutely.
It's all very from his perspective, which is wonderfully done. And at the time in the most of the scenes are done handheld, and that was very rare then. In such a great, in a prolific way, a very, certain shots would have been used handheld, but a lot in this is used handheld, which wasn't a big thing in the 70s then.
Yeah. So Jake is almost caught by Mulray at this point with the water, kind of pouring out, but I think he manages to hide in time.
Quite how he didn't spot him, I don't know.
Yeah, I always, like, when you first see that scene, you're like, I'm assuming he did get spotted, but the film acts like he didn't, so I'm assuming he didn't. But yeah, it is like, how did you hide in that bit? It's like kind of one of the few awkward moments in this movie where it doesn't quite line up for me, where I'm like, pretty sure he would have seen you there, but fine.
It could be he just doesn't care.
It could well be, and obviously it could also be that he's just not got that great eyesight and just doesn't see him. But Jake continues to follow Mulray. He gets a photograph of a heated argument between Mulray and an elderly man we will come to know later in the film, in the middle of the street, and eventually, from a rooftop, he manages to get a photo of him kissing a young blonde. And
you should mention when there's that really cool thing he does with the
stopwatches.
That's
such an awesome moment. I couldn't remember at which point that happened. I think it is around here because he judges how long he's with the blonde, right? Yeah.
Because he's been there all night, and he's like, he decided to leave, but he wants to make sure that he knows when he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So he winds up a watch. It's got a whole glove box full of watches.
It's a very expensive method of finding out when people leave.
Yeah. Well, I think it's got the price on how much they are.
They're probably very cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're quite cheap watches, and he puts the one under the wheel of his car and goes. And then when you go to the
following day, isn't it?
Before he gets the pictures, you get two pictures of the two watches side by side, one broken and one not, unbroken. And that's a weird thing in the throughout this movie, that the director says it was unintentional, but very, very sort of, welcome. And it's like broken couples.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is definitely some unintentional symbology there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of thick pairs that seem that one of the pairs is broken. So there's, we'll get the slight spoilers for later, but there's a pair of glasses with a broken lens.
Yeah.
There's the sisters. There's Jake's nose.
Yeah.
There's her, is it Evelyn? Yeah, it's Evelyn's eye. She has a flaw in it.
Yes.
And when they later on, there's a thing with shoes. There's twice you see a missing shoe on someone.
Yeah.
On certain people. So there's this weird thing throughout the whole movie of two things with one of them being missing or broken, and the director says unintentional. It just happened that way. But it's very cool.
It is very cool, and it does kind of add another layer to the movie. For sure. So the next day he's basically, he's outed this guy now. He knows because I think he uses the stopwatches to know that he stayed there the whole night, right? It's like, they stayed the whole night, so obviously this is a proper scandal. This is not it's not just, he just kissed. It's like, there's something going on here. So the photo that he takes gets published in the paper the following day. Big scandal.
And you get this. There's a scene where he's in the barber shop and he's getting a shave, and the guy next to him, basically calls him scum. He says to him, you're a detective. You take pictures of people and you ruin people's lives.
I think it's the PI
really
thing, isn't it?
He gets really pissy because he
thinks he's honourable. He's like, I'm helping. He's like, I help people, unlike
he's a banker, and he's like, well, fuck you.
No, isn't it like a mortgage?
You're a banker.
Isn't he like a mortgage guy? And he's like, how many people's mortgages have you? Like, how many of you? How many people have you kicked out of homes recently? Like I'm actually helping people. I'm a private investigator. So he, and again, you're learning more and more about Jake, and you're learning that he clearly believes he's doing the the right thing, or at least he's quite defensive about being seen as sleazy.
Yeah, he's definitely sensitive about it. You can see that he's, you know, he obviously gets there's some sort of inkling that he probably isn't doing.
Yeah, I think he probably realizes that a lot of what he would like to see the job as is not necessarily the case, and I think he's probably aware that whilst occasionally he does help people, there is a lot of his day-to-day is quite sleazy, and that's probably unavoidable. But he gets very defensive with this guy. So we see that, you know, he is quite defensive about his work, and we also see through, I think, the stopwatches that he is very capable of his job. He's very good. And you've also got that great shot of when they're on the rowboats as well, with his mate. He's like, I'm just taking a photo with my friend in this boat, and then he kind of turns, and obviously it's kind of half funny because it's really obvious what he's doing, but at the same time it again just shows that he's quite cunning and quite good at his job. But
and the thing with the publication of the photos is, he says he didn't do it. He was unaware that it was going to be that, you know, published like that. So but he doesn't. At first, he doesn't really think anything of it.
Well, he doesn't think it's a big deal. He's like, oh, whatever. You know,
it's like, well, that's just how it goes, isn't it?
It's the barber that it's in the barber shop, as you said, that he's kind of becomes aware of the photos publication.
Yeah.
And he gets told a racist joke at the barber shop. And then he goes back to his office and he's like, "Oh, receptionist lady, can you please leave while I tell this racist joke to the lads?" I can't remember what it is now. Something about
it's to do with
Chinaman is the punchline.
Yeah, it's to do with having sex like a Chinaman or something.
That's right. Yeah, and it was like, okay, but so he tells this joke, and the whole time his staff are looking at him like, you might want to stop. But they're not like overly obvious, but they can't be because
they're trying to.
The trouble is that Mulray is literally stood looking at them, so they can't be too obvious. But they are looking at him like, it's like kind of shock and just like, oh no, this is bad.
I think that also shows that sometimes he can be fucking oblivious.
Yeah.
Because anybody else could have picked up on these two dudes are massively uncomfortable, and they're going, Jake. Jake, he's like, just let me finish the story. He's like, it's like, no, let me finish the story. And he's adamant. And he's like, no, get the signal.
It's made worse because he laughs his ass off at his own joke afterwards as well. Like it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
And
again, it just shows that he's this sort of rough dude. He's not.
Yeah.
He's not as classy as he makes out he is.
So he turns around and he sees this woman. Who is very angry, and she says, "You know, have you ever met me before?" And he's like, "No." She's like, "You're certain?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely certain. I've never met you before in my life, never seen you before." And of course, she introduces herself as the real Evelyn Mulray, and says, "Well, you know me now, and you're gonna get to know my lawyers even better because we're gonna sue you for defamation." She walks out and he's kind of stunned, and she just kind of leaves the lawyer there, who's then like, yeah, you need these papers, and
he's just about getting tough, and she says, I don't get tough, Mr. Getters, my lawyer does.
Yeah. But yeah, so you know, she's unhappy. But of course, Jake then starts to uncover more. He uncovers information that you know, I think when he goes to the records office, doesn't he? And he learns that, you know, despite the drought, there was you know, and the proposal for the dam, the water and power department is basically still pumping fresh water into the ocean at night. And obviously he saw that when he was waiting to spy on Mulray. And obviously the dam project has been opposed by Mulray. And basically, you know, as we saw in the meeting, that it, you know, that could be a complete disaster. It's not something he wants to do. You know, having previously supported the previous one, he's like, no, not this time. So, you know, he's kind of aware that there may be something more to this at this stage, but in any case, Jake basically later goes to the Mulray mansion because he's like, I should probably go and talk to Evelyn myself rather than rather than deal with the lawyer. Maybe I'll have more luck if I go see her personally. He basically waits out and importantly waits in the garden, doesn't he? And he meets the Japanese gardener. Who's cleaning out the pond, and he pulls out this clump of grass, and he's like, he says, oh, it's bad for the glass, doesn't he? It's like broken English. And Jake kind of ignores it. He's like, oh, bad for the glass. Okay, fine. But he notices something shiny in the pool. But when he goes to get it, Evelyn turns up. She says that Mulray, takes afternoon walks down by the reservoir, and maybe go look for him down there. Maybe you'll find him.
He's not been in his office because he's
out.
And he does go to the office first, doesn't he? Because he does.
Yeah. Sorry.
He finds out a number of things about he sees the pictures of him and Cross, and the secretary basically tells him that they own all the water, that it's theirs. Him and Cross, and he's like, oh well, alarm bells start ringing. It's like, okay, so there's something seriously weird going on. This is not,
maybe it's more than an affair. So, following her advice, Jake does, head to the reservoir, and he finds Mulray. He manages to kind of bluff his way past the checkpoint, and basically, as he gets there, he's like, "Look, I'm here to see Mulray," and the policeman's like, "Oh, yeah, he's over there." And it's like he looks over and is like, "Oh, dead body." And
literally pulling him out of this.
They're literally pulling him out of the reservoir at that point. Because don't they say at some point that he basically has been like swept all the way down this reservoir, basically. Like he's ended up in the reservoir, but he's basically gone pretty much the entire journey down the sewers and down wherever into to get to that. And
he's got this horrible expression on his face. He's got his eyes are like stark open, and he does not look good. Good. He's a very unhappy looking corpse.
Yes.
And he's got one shoe missing.
He's what, sorry?
He's got one shoe missing.
Yes, one shoe missing, yeah. Now, they believe that Mulray drowned. And we also learn here that Jake used to work with Escobar, the lead investigator on this case.
Yeah, who's just been promoted.
Yes, he's just been promoted. And it is someone that Jake respects relatively.
We get the impression that he's actually a good cop. This guy.
Yeah, I mean later I think
not so much. Clearly, one of the officers that keeps turning up, he's a real dick.
Yeah.
But you get the impression that he's actually, one of the good ones.
I think later he says that he's a good guy and he trusts him, but he still has to work within the police system, which he sees as corrupt. So he's kind of like, he's a good guy, but you can only trust him as much as you can trust the system, which is kind of broken, as we will discover later. So they think he's drowned anyway. And I think it's later. Yeah, he visits the coroner a little later, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's right. So the police interview Evelyn about her husband. And they all assume that she is the one that hired Jake.
Yeah.
And she kind of basically looks at him and Jake's like, okay, yeah, fine. Yeah. She hired me to look into it,
and he kind of he almost
he's backed into a corner. He's like basically like, oh, do I say, because basically she'll go down if he's like, no, you didn't hire me. What are you talking about, so he basically corroborates her lie, and when the police leave, she thanks him, and basically then does actually hire him. She's like, well, now I actually want to hire you to investigate what happened to my husband. Like, how did he end up dead? What happened? So Jake heads to the coroner's department, and he learns that Mulray's lungs were filled with salt water.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a freshwater reservoir, so bit puzzling. Why? How has he got salt water in his lungs?
I love the coroner. He's just
yeah.
I guess it's the typical coroner, isn't it? With gallows humor but they're just this place is just full of bodies that are just led around. Not like they appear to have a great deal of professionalism in this fucking place.
Yeah. And he also learns that a local drunk was found dead in a dry riverbed that Mulray had been basically inspecting and looking at as well.
And it's he says it was a bit weird. 2 people drowned at the same time. It's just a bit odd, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think next is later that night when Jake basically climbs over this fence and
he goes to the riverbed first, doesn't he? Because he goes to see where the tramp died.
Yes, he does first. Yeah.
So he goes to the sort of it's like a bridge, isn't it, where the tramp has been living underneath. And it's like there's a bit of water there, and there's obviously the little sort of hut that this guy had built for himself.
Yeah.
And although there's evidence that water has been there, it doesn't look.
It's dry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he sees this little kid riding a horse, which he saw when Mulray was talking. Mulray was looking at the riverbed, and he asks him, what they were talking about, and he was saying about, the water being pumped in, and he said, yeah, it happens in a number of places up and down, the city.
Yeah, always at night.
Yeah.
So later, Jake basically climbs over this fence and heads around the reservoir to kind of look around, when suddenly, and I'm always kind of caught off guard by this the way they do this shot. He is basically just shot at. And it is quite shocking when you watch it, because it comes out of nowhere, like to him and you. And I think that kind of goes back to what you said about things being very much from his perspective.
Yeah,
I think a lot of films would have probably shown you the gunman, where they were, shown you someone sneaking up on him, or you don't get any of that. You see it from his perspective. Like you said, your analogy of it being like a third-person video game is very apt. Actually, that kind of sums this movie up. The way this film is shot very well.
I mean, the game LA Noire takes its whole its whole ethic, everything
the
in that game is
totally
just from this movie alone, really, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Yeah, and he is like shot at, and he can't see the shooter, it's quite a shocking moment. And he basically runs and hides into in a culvert. But of course it's nighttime. So there's a sudden rush of water, and he basically almost drowns. And before he gets detained by 2 security guards.
He also loses his shoe, doesn't he?
Well? Yes. As you said, the ongoing theme of missing things. Yeah, he loses his shoe. That's not the only thing he loses, but he loses his shoe, and then these 2 security guards basically detain him, and he's approached by a big thug and a small thug.
Yeah, and we'd previously seen the big thug when he was at the water offices.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
he was coming out of the office, and he was at the lift, and they've obviously got history, these dudes, and he basically makes fun of him, doesn't he? Basically calls him a gorilla, basically.
Yeah.
He says he's working. He tells him that he's working for the company, and it's like, that's interesting. That tells him something. And of course, then he turns up with this little guy,
Roman Polanski.
He immediately takes the piss out of and says, where did you get the midget?
Played by Roman Polanski.
Yes.
Which is a really cool cameo. So he basically calls him a nosy fella, and basically says, this is what happens to nosy fellas, and basically slashes his nose apart, right? Like the one side of his nose.
he
puts the knife in his cuts one
his nostril and slits it open, which is such a great shot. It's a really good, trick knife shot. And the blood spray is really visceral. It's like, wow, that's such a great.
It's a fantastic shot. It looks perfect. I mean, it really does. And his reaction and his acting to it as well, to the pain and everything is.
I think there's a thing about Jack Nicholson's reaction is, I think, genuine fear, because the trick knife was still sharp.
Yeah.
And it's only a trick on one side. So if he had the wrong end up, the wrong side,
he would have
genuinely cut his nose open.
Well, I mean, either way, it looks great on film. Like, he properly looks terrified. Whether that was genuine fear or not, it may well have been genuine fear.
A mixture of both, I think. Great acting and a little bit of fear.
I guess
I think the tensions on this movie sound like they were really high, because Faye Dunaway and Roman Polanski didn't get on. Jack and Roman Polanski argued on a number of occasions. One occasion, Jack was watching a Lakers. Jack Nicholson's a famously big fan of the Lakers. He watches every game, and apparently he wouldn't come out of his caravan because he was watching the Lakers game. And apparently Polanski went in and tried to break it with a mop, and then when that didn't work, he apparently threw it out of the window. So I think there was a lot of tension on this set. I think and Faye Dunaway hated him. There was twice there was whether they're true or not, or if they are true, they're fucking awful scenes. He apparently got there was one of her hairs was poking up in, and he kept getting annoyed with it. So he went up to her and just plucked it out of her head, like completely shocking her.
Wow.
And then there was another time where he refused to let her go off set and go to the toilet. So apparently she relieved herself into a cup and threw it in his face.
Man.
So it sounds like it was, it wasn't a happy set most of the time, a lot of the times.
No, and I was thinking, this shot is. I can't imagine you'd be able to get away with like a super fake looking knife because of the shot. So I guess it had to be kind of like a real knife, but blunted on one side and kind of tricked on one side, or whatever they did.
Yeah.
It had to be a real blade. So yeah, but it's a great shot. It's probably the shot that most people know from this film, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, if you haven't watched this film and you've seen clips, this is probably the bit you've seen.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of one of the more well-known bits. But he basically, the thug basically threatens to cut off his entire nose. He's like, if you come snooping again, you're going to lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
Basically as a result of this, for most of the rest of the film, Jake has a massive bandage over one side of his nose.
It sort of gets lesser as the movie goes on.
Which I love, because it's healing.
When you first see it, it's this huge...
It's like his whole nose
thing
is
on his face. Yeah. It's great. And, again, it's another of those sort of showing him as not quite so heroic. He's not your typical hero.
Mm.
He's got this massive bandage on his face for a big portion of the movie.
And the thing I love about it as well is that despite having this, I guess he probably knows it'll be okay because it's stitched up and whatnot. But life-changing scar on his face potentially. It's
gonna leave a mark.
Certainly going to leave a mark. He's got this ludicrous bandage all over his nose, and yet his ego doesn't seem to take any hit. And he still tries to be sexy with the women, and he's still it doesn't stop it. He doesn't miss a beat with it, even though he's got this.
He's a vain asshole. He really is.
He is, but you would think a vain asshole would be hit in some way by having this, but he's not at all. His ego is like, nope, it's fine. I'm still like the most handsome guy in the room. yeah, I can pull this off. Totally seems to be his attitude. But yeah, so he has this bandage, and he gets a call while at the office. I think he's at the office, or is he at home when he gets the call?
I think he's at the office first.
He's at the office. He gets a call from Ida Sessions, who is the woman who originally pretended to be Evelyn, the original woman who hired him. Of course, at the time, he thought this was Evelyn Mulray. And she basically admits to hiring him. She's like, "Look, I'm the lady that hired you, and tricked you." And Jake's like, "Hey, come to the office, and I think we can probably help each other." Because of course, at this point, he's like, "I want to know who hired her, because that might, explain where, who murdered, Evelyn's husband." But she refuses. She says, no, I'm not coming to the office. And he's like, "Well, who hired you?" And she's like, "Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just read today's obituaries, and you'll see one of the people." And promptly hangs up. And that's all the information he's got. And of course, he looks over at his he's got. Oh, because I love this scene as well. Sorry, I forgot. Because his co-workers or his employees are just talking shit next to him, and he just doesn't care until she's like, "Are you alone?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm alone." And he's like, "Shut the fuck up." Shut up. Because of course at first he's not taking it seriously, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm the person who hired you originally." And he's like, "Oh, no, be quiet, both of you." But yes, so she tells him to check the obituaries, and saying that he'll find one of the people there. So he heads to the water department, and while he's there, he sees photographs of the old man that he saw Mulray arguing with in the street. I thought
that was earlier, but it doesn't matter.
I don't know. You might be right. We had to put this off by a week, so my memory's bad enough when I watched the film the day before, and now it's been the best part of a week. I kind of quickly skimmed through the movie today again to try and get the order right, but yeah, you may be right. It may be. I can't remember.
Either way,
he learns that it's Noah Cross.
He ends up in the water place twice, doesn't he? So he does once where he talks to the guy,
yes,
and once where they pretend. Yeah, so this is actually you might be right. I think this is where he sees the pictures of Cross, and he's told that they.
Well, either way, at some point he learns that it's Noah Cross and that it's Evelyn's father.
Yeah.
The real Evelyn's father, not the fake one. So he used to own the water utility, and was basically a partner of Mulray's. But they ended their partnership, and basically sold it to the city, which apparently Mulray had always wanted to do, or long wanted to do. And I guess it was Noah that kind of disagreed with him.
You get the impression that Mulray wanted to do wants to
do the right thing.
The right thing. Yeah. He wants sort of the city to have a good sort of supply of water. He wants it for everyone to have this right thing, and obviously Cross just wants to make fucking money.
Yeah, I mean, much like the head of the inspector in charge of the case from the police side, it seems the same with Mulray, Mr. Mulray, where they were the few good people in a corrupt system, and he was trying to do the right thing, and you get the impression that Noah probably fought him on that as long as he could, and until they came to an end and finally ended their partnership and actually sold it to the city. So I think he speaks to Yelburton briefly, doesn't he? And basically tells him, he's like, "Look, I think Mulray was murdered. That's my opinion." And
he says that you hired the actress. It was you that hired the actress.
Yeah. Yeah, and he basically says, I don't want you charged with a crime, but I want to nail the people that are behind all of this. I just want to get the people that are behind it all. And speaking of people that are behind it all, Noah Cross invites Jake to lunch at his house, and he basically puts on this Well, I guess it's meant to be a fine meal. I mean, well, I'm vegan, and even if I wasn't, I'm not a big fan of eating things with a face. Because he brings out the fish, but he's got the full head on, and he's like, I believe this meal is meant to be served with the head still attached and whatever. I've never liked that ever. But I love, my favorite person in this scene is the waiter, who is just doing his best. He's really trying, and Jake keeps getting up from his seat and grabbing a drink and putting the drink back down, and every time he's like trying to grab the drink off him to put it delicately back on the table or put the chair back, and then he's like, it keeps changing his mind and getting up and leaving and coming back. And this poor waiter, you just imagine he's just like, oh, for God's sake, please just let me serve this meal that I've been working on and getting everything prepared for. But basically Noah is like, starts questioning Jake, and at first I think Jake just thinks, well, you're questioning me because it's your daughter and you're protective over your daughter, right? But as time goes on, he kind of starts to get suspicious, and he basically says, look, I want to hire you to find the blonde girl that you photograph Mulray with, because logically she might know what happened to him. She might even be involved. And he also, like, quite, obviously it's hard in hindsight because Noah Cross by the end of the movie, but even I think even at this stage, when he says like, oh, I'd like to comfort her because she'd be upset, and you're already like, you're not right. There's something sleazy with you, dude. You're not.
The things he says.
He drops things that are like, there's more to you than just a rich prick. Like,
and isn't it at this point that that he says to Jake, you may think you know what's going on.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's going on. You're kind of better off leaving this alone.
He's giving him the advice that he gave fake Evelyn at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. You don't want to know. And the thing is, it makes it so much more sinister when he's almost bragging at this point. When he's like, hey, you don't know what's going on. In plain sight, he's basically saying, hey, you don't want to know what the fuck's happened here. Believe me, and
Jake's, he thinks he's getting, he thinks he knows something that Cross don't, because he says to him, I know you argued with him. I've got pictures of you, arguing with Mulray. And
I love that, because he actually, Cross gets up from the table, and you get that great shot of Cross. He's like left of camera, right and left of screen is just his face, and he's smiling and cocky and arrogant. And then when Jake says, "Oh, I saw you having that argument," his face drops immediately, and he's like, "Oh shit!"
But it's not the win. It's not the win that he thinks it is.
No.
He's overconfident about his hand, and
he plays his hand too soon for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Cross is, he's used to. He's obviously not used to being, having one put over on him. But he's obviously lasted long enough that he knows that. This is a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, this is not his first situation.
Yeah.
And he also kind of hints that Jake's probably sleeping with Evelyn as well.
Well, he's straight up asks her, doesn't he? He says, "Are you sleeping with my daughter?" Which is actually funny because Jack Nicholson was seeing Angelica Houston at the time.
Oh, really?
And apparently she was on set during the filming of that scene, so it was obviously very uncomfortable.
Really awkward.
Jack Nicholson, when he's asking, "Are you sleeping with my daughter?" and it's like,
But yes, so
we also get this. There's a thing here as well that when they was at the offices, he sees this thing for a fishing club.
Oh yes, that's important later.
Like here, isn't it? It's it's partly to do with this where he gets picked up by Cross's men and
yeah. So you get the impression here that Cross he's kind of testing Jake to see if he could probably just like bribe him or scare him off. And ultimately he does kind of give up here when he realizes, I think Jake's going to go through with this anyway. I might just have to deal with him some other way. Basically, it's like he's not going to go away. Jake heads.
It also tells him that he clearly doesn't fucking know enough.
Yeah. Yes. A, he doesn't know enough, but B, he's not going to give up. So it's like, he doesn't know enough to do anything right now, but he probably needs dealing with one way or another. Jake heads to the Hall of Records and sees this boy who's like basically working. He's like covered in spots and
Mr. Acne.
Yeah, and he's kind of a job's worth. You get the impression it's his first job, and he's gonna, But he basically finds in the Hall of Records that there's like a massive part of the valley that's been bought up in the past couple of months by these new landowners, and basically purchased loads of land. And he basically goes back to this guy and he's like, hey, can I borrow this book? And he's like, this is a Hall of fucking Records. It's not a library. You can't just take books away. That's not how this works. So he's like, well, I'm really struggling to read it. Can I borrow a ruler? Because like I want to follow the line and my eyesight's not great. And so he does. And I love how drawn out this scene is, where he's going through his like drawer.
He makes a real meal of it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's like, oh god, fine.
These drawers and trying to find a ruler for him.
And then of course you get the classic, and it might have started with this. I don't know if this is the first time I've seen this in a film. It might be the earliest film I've seen it in, where he does the cough as he rips a page out of a book. With the ruler, so he uses the ruler to get a straight line, and then coughs as he tears the page out, and puts it in his pocket.
You also see here when he goes into the aisles that one of the other employees comes up to him and they're talking, and he picks up a phone, so they're obviously reporting that he's there to whoever they report to, which I'm presuming is Cross's men,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, he decides at this point to act on a tip from the fake Evelyn, and he basically starts to this whole scandal is starting to unravel about.
Yeah, one of the names that has bought up this chunk of land, it was one of the people that have died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
he basically goes to the address for this person.
Yes. So he heads to the orange farm. I think that's
oh yes.
Is that where he heads next?
I think you're right. Yeah. He doesn't go up to the home yet, does he? He goes there with Evelyn.
Yes, that's right. I think he goes there with Evelyn. So he heads to the orange farm to basically, he wants to talk to the owner about, what's going on with the irrigation of the land. Like, what's the situation? But as soon as he's literally driving in and is immediately shot at by a farmer on horseback.
Yeah.
And this is a real tense scene as well, where he's like trying to drive through the orange, the orange crop, but every turn there's like more farmers coming out with guns, and they end up shooting, I think, the radiator, because it starts like pissing water out the front of the car. Yeah. And then, oh god, what always breaks my heart when a beautiful car like this crashes?
I know.
It's like, oh, it's such a lovely car.
It's a totally beautiful car.
I don't know where. Yeah, he does crash it, and not in that like they may have used a shell or something, but often in old movies they'd cut away and you just hear the crash, and then you'd see the crash after, and you're like, that car is fine. It they just put some smoke in in the thing, and it's fine, and it'll be fine later. Usually just like open the bonnet, have a bit of smoke, fine. This crashes. This like nails a tree, and it's like, oh, I hope that wasn't a real car. But basically, yeah, he's like kind of totally out of it, and then he's immediately jumped on by this guy, and he tries his best to kind of defend himself, but this one guy has like a crutch.
Yep.
And he's just smacking the hell out of Jake with this crutch. And eventually they just get the best. They get the best of him, and he can't fight anymore, and he's kind of they keep him down, and basically the head farmer is like, get the fuck off our land. Like
you know, who you work, you know,
who are you working for? What are you, you know, people, you've been sent before to basically run us off. You're not going to run us off. And he basically thinks that he's part of the people that are stealing the water and taking the water away, and that you know, he's like complicit in this whole scheme. But Jake basically, you know, says like, I'm not with the Department of Water and Power. Like, I'm not one of the people harassing you and poisoning your wells and stuff. Like, it's not me. And he tries to show him the documentation, but then they keep beating on him, and he's like, even the farmer's like let him talk. just stop punching him for a minute. That's like, because he keeps hitting him with this bloody crutch as well. He's like, just let him talk a minute. It's fine. And he's like, no, like, you know,
he does nab one of them, which is like quite satisfying.
Well, that's the thing. It feels like he's finally kind of getting somewhere.
Yeah.
In explaining himself, but then he insults the big guy.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he calls him.
He just it's like, again, it's another one of those signs where you just think he just can't keep his mouth shut.
He could have talked his way out of this. I feel like it like, I mean, they started at like 11. Like, they escalate immediately, almost murdered someone. But you feel like, you know, tensions were reducing here. This could have worked out okay, right? But unfortunately, as you said, he just can't help himself. He insults this guy. The guy punches him, so Jake kicks him squarely in the balls. And the guy sells it properly as well. He properly is like agony. But yeah, of course, he's basically beaten and knocked unconscious. And he wakes up to basically find the farmer and his wife over him, and they're like, well, we beat you up pretty bad, so we thought we'd better call someone. Yeah. So they've called Evelyn, who has come to the farm to pick him up, because obviously he doesn't have a car anymore either. And
basically, we phoned your employer because, you know,
because she employed him. Yeah,
stuff he's got on, you know, on him and things. So they're sort of quite apologetic that, you know, they did.
They're like, sorry for almost murdering you and destroying your car. But basically on the drive back, she drives him back. He basically explains to her what he thinks this whole scandal is. That basically, you know, her father and his partners are basically forcing the farmers surrounding the city off their land so that they can buy it cheap. And then they'll build this new dam, and basically the water will be all redirected, and it'll basically increase the land. They're basically droughting the land, decreasing the value, buying the land, building the dam, and then increasing the value once it's got water on it, and everything's wonderful and growing there, and all fantastic. Quite an insidious, it's a long game plan.
And it really happened too.
Yes, yeah. Well, this is the bit that is kind of based in reality, right?
Yeah, that's what really happened.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. But yes, so Cross basically, you know, he doesn't want any records, obviously. We discover how he's got around this. So, Jake and Evelyn head to the old people's retirement home.
Yeah.
And he basically acts like he's like, doesn't he act like his dad's there?
Yeah, he acts like he's thinking of sending his dad.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's thinking of sending his dad there. And basically, doesn't he make out like he's like, well, there's not much wrong with him. I just don't fucking like him.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like kind of like he's just an asshole, so I just want to chuck him in this home. Just be done with him.
I love, you know, he's what I love is when the camera's sort of on him when he's sort of smiling and bullshitting his way, and you can see Evelyn's just sort of behind him, and her face when she's sort of like looking at him like she's going along with the line.
Like, wow.
You can see her face just says, "What the fuck is going on? What's happening right now?" What? She looks sort of both horrified and impressed at the same time. It's a really great expression she has on her face.
But basically, yeah, he manages because he's basically got this obituary column that he stole earlier. He manages to identify some of the eldest residents of this home. And basically discovers that they own all the land. It's all in their name. And one of the obituary names is basically one of the names from the book. So he basically has this he's like, "Hello ladies," and he has this lovely conversation with these old ladies, one of which is very rich if she only knew it, because this all of this land is basically in her name.
He says about money, and she's like, "I don't have any money."
Yeah, but he's like, "Yes, you do. You're very wealthy. Believe me."
They're sewing, aren't they? They're making this sort of tapestry, and it's again, it's the symbol on it is the fishing club, isn't it?
Yes, because they were given it as a gift, right? The flag or whatever was given to them as a gift, and they're like, "Oh, we get all sorts of gifts," and Jake's like, "What kind of gifts?" But just at that point, the guy comes back and realizes that he's been lying and that he's up to something, and says, "Oh, someone wants to talk to you. You need to leave now." And of course, Jake's still charming to the ladies. "Oh, bye, ladies. See you later." And he basically heads out. Because I think that's right. Because he goes in under the guise that he wants to tour the facility, right? To see if he wants to bring his dad that he hates there. But yeah, anyway, so he basically is told he has to leave, and in the lobby, there is a man waiting for him.
The ape and the midget.
The ape and the midget, and he tells Evelyn, he's like, "Oh, can we leave the girl out of this?"
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna walk her to her car, and he's like, "Oh, I think she knows the way. She knows the way. You stay here." And Evelyn, of course, says, "Oh no, I'm gonna stay. And Jake says, "Get in the car." And she obviously realizes at that point, he's like, oh, okay, yeah. So she does, and he nicely walks her to the door. She walks out of the building. As soon as she's out the door, he rushes this guy and beats the crap out of him.
I think it's not a pretty fight.
It's a very natural fight.
Good fighter.
Yeah,
he's a brawler.
Yes. And it's dirty.
The way he's fighting, it's more of a sort of tricks and...
Yeah, it's like kicks to the balls and pulling... Because I think here he pulls a jacket over his head and punches him in repeatedly in the head, runs him into a pillar and such. It's all dirty fighting for sure.
Yeah.
He's not a trained fighter. He's not like ex-military or...
No. There's no... fancy martial arts moves or anything like that, or even like decent boxing moves. He just brawls.
Yeah. I mean, it's 37, right? So it's pre-war.
Yes.
So yeah. He basically, like you said, he beats the crap out of this guy. At which point, he drops a gun.
Yep.
And the manager goes to reach for the gun, and I love this shot because Jake kicks the gun out of the way. Yeah. By this point, the whole retirement home are like, "This is the best thing this is the only interesting thing that's ever happened in this building." Ever. The old ladies there that he was just chatting up and everything, they're all there. And I love the manager thinks he's going to go for him.
Yeah.
And instead he just picks up his hat and puts his hat on. It's such a cool move. It's so cool. But then, of course, he notices two other heavies, the other two coming towards him. And
Midget isn't actually in that point. At that point, he comes running in now, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. They both come in. He sees them approaching. Obviously, he realizes they're probably going to shoot at him because the other thug had a gun. But fortunately... Evelyn almost murders them with the car. She speeds up in that car, and Jake manages to get on the foot, the step, because those cars had like steps, didn't they? Which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, well,
it makes for very cinematic escapes and gunfights and stuff when they've got a step on the side of the car. One of the staples of
gangster movies in the sort of 30s, isn't it? Is the gangster stood on the lip, firing machine guns as they're driving around corners and stuff.
Yeah. So he uses that to escape, and meanwhile they're getting shot at. Evelyn's driving as fast as she can, and they're shooting at him. Not sure if that's foreshadowing, but might be. But they manage to get away just about, and they head to Evelyn's house, and he's like, hey, you I can't remember what he says. He's like something like, you saved my you saved my life back there. Because again, that the commoner in him comes out. The lad in him.
He says things and then tries to reel them back, doesn't he?
Yeah. He tries. He's like, oh god, no, actually, I'm a PI. I'm professional. So he basically asks her if she's got any like disinfectant, I think, because he wants to clean his wound because his nose is bleeding.
Yeah.
So iodine, did you say? Yeah, you might be right.
I think he says iodine.
That probably makes sense. But yes, so she basically sees this wound. She's like, that must really hurt. And he's like, only when
I breathe.
Yeah, only when I breathe. It's like, okay, that's fine. And then of course, I'm assuming it was just a line, but he's like, oh, your eye. He's like, what's that? What's that black mark in your eye? And she says, it's like you said, it's a flaw.
Yeah.
And of course he's all, charming and whatever. And they end up having sex. And we then kind of cut to them in bed afterwards. Of course he's smoking because, it's the standard post-sex thing, right? He's smoking in bed, and basically she kind of asks him about his past and him being a cop and stuff, and he says he used to work in Chinatown, but he basically gave it up because he was responsible for a woman getting killed, maybe, or hurt, at the very least seriously hurt.
Something,
probably killed.
Clearly didn't end well.
No, it was bad enough that he left the force and became a PI, is the insinuation. I'm assuming she probably died, but I don't know. But he basically, at this point, does she get the phone call before he says about the father, or is it, I think she gets the phone call first.
Yeah, I think so.
Because she says, oh, no, I think no. First of all, he lets slip that he spoke to her father. I think that happens first. And she's like, what? And immediately on her face, she is like horrified. She's like, my father. And she's kind of scared when he says it as well. Like, as soon as he brings it up. Now, of course, he's thinking, oh, she's scared because I caught her. She might, I'm kind of might have caught her in this and might have realized her possible complicity in this now that I've spoken to her father. But of course, we will realize she's scared of him for a very different fucking reason.
Yeah, but every time her father is mentioned,
she's horrified,
visibly shaken by it.
Fantastic acting.
Yeah. Oh, Faye Dunaway is amazing. I mean, Faye Dunaway is an amazing actress anyway.
She is, but she's fantastic in this.
Yeah. Just superb.
She really is.
And apparently, only Jack Nicholson wanted her for the part.
Oh, I honestly couldn't imagine anyone else doing this part.
They wanted Jane Fonda.
I mean,
Jane Fonda, and I think Ali McGraw maybe was, the other option.
I mean, I'm sure Jane Fonda would have done an okay job, but not.
Honestly, Jane Fonda's a great actress
not
too.
Like, not a patch on this.
I think she would have brought the same vulnerability and
gravitas,
almost
really.
horror that Faye Dunaway brings to this.
Yeah,
because I think that also at the time, I think though she'd been quite big because of a couple of years before this, we got Bonnie and Clyde, which was catapulted her stardom. I think she was beginning to be on the wane at that point. So the studio were like, no, we don't want her. But Jack Nicholson was like, no.
She's the one.
She's the one.
She perfectly, for me, I think in this movie, she perfectly balances vulnerability and strength.
Yes.
Like, she's very fiercely independent, fiercely strong, but she also has this vulnerability because of her past. And I think Faye just acts the role.
Yeah.
Perfect. As does Jack Nicholson. I mean, that's probably, I think this is a very well-written, well-filmed story anyway. But the lead,
Jack in mind.
Yeah.
So,
but
the writer, Robert Towne, was a roommate of Jack's. So they, he previously didn't. What's that film made before this? It's where they're sailors.
I'm not sure. I think I know the film, but I can't think of the name.
I'm trying to find.
It'll be on IMDb, I would imagine.
The Last Detail.
Yes.
The movie he did before this was The Last Detail, which was a similar sort of thing, that with the writer and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
So it was completely written for Jack.
Yeah. But anyway, Evelyn goes and gets changed after getting a mysterious phone call. She has a cryptic conversation. We hear one side, and she basically says, "Oh, I've got to leave for a while." And he's like, "Well, I'll come with you." And she's like, "No, I need to do this on my own." And he's like, "What are you hiding? You're hiding something. What are you up to?" And she just basically says, "Like, please trust me.
Yeah,
I'll be back. Just please trust me." Of course he's not going to do that. So, because at this point, he still suspects her. He really doesn't know which way this is going. She's quite shady. Her dad's quite shady. Everyone's quite shady. So it's hard to know who to trust, right? And you get the impression that Jake wants to believe Evelyn.
Yeah.
But she's not helping her case by the way she's behaving and some of the things she said and whatnot. So he basically takes Mulray's car and follows Evelyn.
Yeah, he breaks her light so that he can track her better.
Yes.
Which is really cool. Again,
he's smart.
This little detail.
It shows that he knows what he's doing. He's very good at being a PI.
And again, broken pairs.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's this amazing shot here as well. We get this shot of Evelyn pulling up at the house.
Yeah.
And you see her go up in and the camera sort of way back into the sort of street, and you're watching her get in. She goes in, she parks the car, she gets out, she goes into the house, and then Jake's car literally rolls in front of the camera.
It's amazing. It's so good.
Straight in front of the camera, and then sort of lifts up and goes over the bonnet. It's a beautiful shot.
It's
absolutely
shot.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So Jake spies on the house. And I don't know if he's surprised or confused, but he basically spots Mulray's girlfriend, the girl he photographed, and she's crying. And Evelyn is there with the house, I guess the butler or whatever.
Yeah.
He watches them as she's with this crying girl. And as Evelyn leaves, he confronts her. And he's like, "You're holding Mulray's girlfriend hostage. Like, you need to give her up. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
But she's like, "No, you don't understand. The young woman, the girlfriend is my sister. And she's distraught because I hadn't told her. I was waiting for the right time to tell her about Mulray dying. But now it's obviously in the newspaper. She's found out. And so she's really upset. And I'm just trying to look after my sister." Which kind of... Jake backs off a little at that point. He's like, okay, that's weird, but fine. So Jake gets a call later that night from...
what I like about this thing is just, he says, this is getting... he's clearly angry and not knowing all what's going on.
No.
And he's like, "Oh, fuck this, I'm going to bed. I'm going home, I'm going to bed." So, and I think he says he's basically gonna go to the, if she, she should go to the police. He wants to go to the police, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, fuck this. I'm going home. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, had enough. But at home, he gets a call from another detective. I think he's Escobar's partner, right? And he says, like, come and meet me at this address. And so he does. And another shocking scene.
Well, he says is to meet the woman, isn't it? And first of all, he sort of goes, no, I'm not going to bother. And then the phone rings again, and it's like, oh, I'm going to have to get up and go out, aren't I? I'm going to have to go meet this woman. Yeah,
and it's quite shocking. It's quite shocking. Another shocking dead body scene. When he gets to the address, and we kind of follow him. Yeah, third person, as you said. We follow him through the house, and as he opens this door to the bathroom, I believe, we see Ida Sessions, the woman who impersonated Evelyn originally. She has been murdered. She's dead on the floor. And Escobar and his partner are waiting there for him. And, Jake's like, how did you know to call me? Like that? How would you know that? And they basically show him that Jake's number is written next to the phone.
Yeah.
Escobar...
Well, they call him out on his, him saying that she hired that Evelyn.
Evelyn hired him. Yeah.
And they're like, no, she didn't hire you. You got hired by this woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Escobar points out that he knows about the coroner's report. The salt water, even though he's found in fresh water, and basically, like, you fucking knew this earlier, and you didn't tell the detective in charge of this case. Like, you're withholding evidence from a police detective, right? And he's basically like, hand over all your files, any incriminating photos. Anything that could give us the identity of Mulray's murderer, right?
Yep.
Basically, I think Escobar insinuates that they think it's Evelyn.
Yeah, they clearly think it's Evelyn.
But of course, Escobar has the ability to revoke Jake's PI license. So, he's got some pressure on now. So he basically heads back to Evelyn's mansion to look for her, and he finds the gardener working in the backyard, and he remembers, of course, that the saltwater thing. And the gardener says, saltwater is bad for the grass. Grass, not glass, grass. He now realizes that the accent basically masked the original word, and said it was bad for the glass. Basically he gets the guy to get the shiny object out of the pool that he saw earlier, because Evelyn turned up when he was about to grab it earlier. And he discovers that it's some glasses. What, as you said, one of them is smashed.
Broken lens, yeah.
Broken. Evelyn then turns up and he confronts her. Oh, no. Does he go to find her?
I think he goes to find
her. He finds her anyway, and he confronts her. Oh no, that's right. They go to where she's keeping the girl, right? Yep. That's where they go. Sorry, he heads there.
I think it's at James Hong's place.
Yeah, I think you're right. And basically he confronts Evelyn, and Evelyn says, "Look, she's my sister." And he's not having any of it. He's like, "Tell me the goddamn truth." And he starts hitting her, and she's like, "She's my daughter." And he hits her again. He's like, "Tell me the truth." And she's like, "She's my sister." And this goes on a little while before she's like, "She is my sister and my daughter."
Yeah.
And it's a really shocking moment where you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because not only is he's brutalizing this poor bloody woman.
Oh yeah, who's a victim of
the most horrible of crimes.
Yeah, and she never lied to him. She told him. She said her original statement was, "She's my sister." That is true. Yep. She did not lie. Right. But obviously now he.
And there's a couple of times in the movie previously where she sort of almost lets it slip before that there's something with her sister come daughter.
Yeah.
And again, that scene. Apparently, they shot it a number of times and it wasn't working. So Faye Dunaway just said, "Look, just fucking hit me. Yeah, just hit me." And he did. And of course, Nicholson was like, "I really regretted doing it, but it works. It's one of the best scenes ever filmed." They properly go for it in that scene.
Yeah, it's a really hard hitting and shocking scene.
She says, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you get it? He is slow to get it, but you can literally see the cogs turning when he's like mulling over what exactly is going on, and then he sort of the horror comes on his over his face. He's like, fuck, this is just appalling.
Yeah, I mean he's like visibly like, oh Jesus, and he's probably now realizing that Noah was, the sick fuck was actually kind of rubbing it in his face earlier with previous comments, and with that whole "I know more than you know, and you don't want to know," kind of thing. And he asks if he raped her, and she kind of shakes her head like no. So it's kind of, it's confused as to whether it was consensual, but obviously she was underage anyway, so either way it's just fucked up and just a real disgusting, gross situation. But it's pretty clear that Evelyn does not like her father and wants him to have nothing to do with her or her daughter.
And she explains about her relationship with Mulray and how he kind of saved her, and then she disappeared to Mexico and when she was pregnant, and she tried to make sure that Cross never got to her daughter.
Yeah. So obviously at this point, hold on, we missed the part where Jake called the bloody detectives, didn't he?
Oh yeah,
we missed that bit. I think he called the detectives immediately, didn't he? He was like, "Get down here, like come to this address," and and whatnot. But now obviously he's going to help her because he's like, "Oh, okay, now I realize what's going on."
Yeah.
And of course Evelyn says, "Those glasses, they're not my husband's.
Mm-hmm.
They're bifocals, and he didn't have bifocals." So basically he's like, you guys, you need to leave. He's like, you need to go to Mexico. And basically he's like, one of my clients has a fishing boat. Go meet with him. And in Chinatown, and he'll get you on a boat to Mexico and get out of here. So Evelyn, proceeds to leave, and but then of course Cross arrives. And basically says that, hey, you found the girl. You found the girl, but gets basically confronts him and says, look, you're a murderer. And obviously presents the glasses and whatnot. And he basically said, look, Mulray drowned in the saltwater pond at the house and lost his glasses in the act. It was an accident. And he, Jake obviously putting all the pieces together brings up the water scandal. And he basically says, I'm trying to make a community in the desert. It's that typical like, oh yeah, I'm going to get really rich from this, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm helping people. Well, I guess in the same way that
how much money do you have? You've got, basically more money than God. you can't, what else is there? And he's like, starts talking about legacy and all that sort of stuff. And you think, wow, this dude is just a nut job, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's evil fuck.
Yeah, pretty much. He basically, yes. I mean, at this point, I think we've established he is fucking beyond redemption. This man, he is proper awful. One of the most villainous, scummy people I could think of in film, really. Not only from that sleazy business kind of thing, but also from this horrendous dark secret he's had exposed here.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's justifying it. He's like, hey, look, we're gonna create this amazing community, and the revenues is the land is going to generate millions for me, and he's going to basically buy into the future and ensure that his family basically is secure. He's looking after his family as well. But basically, Jake's like, oh yeah, about your family, let's talk about your daughter, and Cross basically says most people. Oh, I've actually got the quote here. Most people never have to face the fact that at the right time and the right place, they're capable of anything.
Yeah.
And Cross then basically tells, of course, because he turned up with Mulvihill, and he basically says that he tells him to take the glasses, because that's basically the only evidence that Jake's got, physical evidence that Jake's got that basically ties everything together. He basically forces him to.
He puts a gun in his ear, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So he gives him the things, and he realizes he's got fuck all now.
Yeah, he's lost everything. He's like, well, your only evidence is gone. He basically takes he forces him to take Evelyn's butler take him easy for me to say. He basically forces him to go to Chinatown, to an address in Chinatown, right?
No, it's not in Chinatown. They only get to Chinatown at the very end, when they're meeting up.
I thought that's where he was forcing them to go, was to Evelyn's hiding place. I thought that's where we were going now. Have I missed a bit? I've missed something.
It's not in the where they live. I don't think it's in Chinatown. Well, anyway,
You may be right. It's Evelyn's hiding place anyway, isn't it? Effectively, is where they're going. But they, as soon as they get there, the detectives there, the police are already there, and they basically arrest him for conspiracy and withholding evidence. I mean, they're not wrong. He did withhold evidence, and he did lie. So he is guilty of the crimes that this doesn't. Although we learn that Noah has ties to the police, and that they are in his back pocket. I still think that Escobar is a straight up cop, and he's like, no, I'm actually arresting you on things you are guilty of, and he is guilty of it. Throughout this film, he has lied to the police. He's withheld evidence. He definitely is in the wrong. So they're going to arrest him, and he basically tries to explain the plan to Escobar. He's like, look, Cross's plan is this, but Escobar's like, I don't care.
Yep.
I've got you on this. You're going down for this, and puts him in handcuffs. Evelyn comes out with her daughter, and basically, she heads to her car.
Hang on. We've missed it.
That's why I was saying. I don't know if I've missed something here.
Yeah,
correct me.
We get to the bit where he's with he takes the coppers to his mate's house.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes. Sorry, go for it. Sorry.
He basically says he tells the cops that he's going to take him to Evelyn, doesn't he?
Yes.
So and they drive off, and he actually takes him to the Paulie. I can't remember that.
Yeah, Paulie. Yeah, we'll call him Paulie. Fine.
He takes him to Paulie's house, and says, "Oh, I'll go in and get her out. You just wait here." And he goes in and says, "You've got a house, or a car we can take. We'll go out the back. We'll sneak out." So he sneaks him out the back, and you see the wife has got this big black eye, where obviously, from the opening case is her husband obviously hit her because of she's been sleeping around, and they escape out the back. He drives around, and basically he says, I want you to take some friends of mine to Mexico. Meet them at Chinatown later on. He goes. He says everybody meet up at Chinatown, and we'll all sort this out. Everything will get sorted out. So that's basically what happens.
Mm-hmm. And yes, sorry, I knew I'd missed. I mean, it was bugging me. I was like, I'm sure I've missed something here. I'm missing a bit. Yes, so they head to Chinatown, as we said. You get to the point where Evelyn is leaving with her daughter.
Yeah.
Looking to drive away, but then basically Cross turns up and is like, "Hey, I want custody of my daughter," which of course is Catherine. And of course Evelyn is horrified by this because as we said, we're not, the consensual nature of this is kind of left a little vague, although either way she was clearly taken advantage of. This is clearly gross and disgusting. Either way, Evelyn absolutely does not want Cross anywhere near her daughter because she knows what he's like, and you can probably guess the way that's going to go, right? So he demands custody. She refuses, and she actually pushes him, and then she shoots him in the arm, which I'm not sure if that's on purpose. I thought it was on purpose. She was like, "Get away," rather than "I'm going to murder you."
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just a case of. I think she just shoots.
She shoots, maybe, yeah. I
think it's just the desperate nature that.
Yeah.
She just shoots him to get him the fuck away from Catherine.
Yeah,
and of course there's a bunch of coppers here.
Yeah. The cops are there.
Her shoot him, and
speed
she gets
off
in the car, and she tries to drive off.
This is such a great. I mean, this is horrific, but it's such a great shot. This long shot of the car driving away as they shoot at it.
Yeah,
and it kind of goes further and further away, and then suddenly you just hear the horn, and it just stops. It comes to a complete stop, and then there's that moment of silence, and then all you hear is Catherine screaming.
Yeah.
Of course, Jake's in cuffs. He's cuffed to an officer. But they all basically run up to the car. And I mean, it's a pretty graphic scene. I mean, Evelyn literally has been shot through the back of the head through her eye.
Yeah.
There's a massive hole in her head.
Her flawed eye.
Yes, her flawed eye. There is blood all over the seat, dashboard. Catherine is just, whoever this actress is, by the way, does a fantastic job as well.
She's great.
She is just
Belinda Palmer.
She's fantastic. She's screaming and just horrified. And of course you've got fucking Cross.
I mean, but the reveal as well it's the way that one of the coppers opens the door.
Yeah, and she just falls.
Evelyn's body just falls out of the driver's seat, and you get that horrible reveal of this massive wound on her face.
Yeah, it's a really convincing shot as well. Even now it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a really amazingly well shot scene. It's horrific. You see Noah comforting Catherine, and you know where that's going to go.
Yeah,
you know where this is leading now.
Yeah, he's like covering her, trying to cover her eyes, and as he's literally pulling her out of the car.
Yeah. Jake is obviously just devastated. There's another woman that he's tried to help, just like in Chinatown previously.
But the annoying thing about his character is that his own arrogance made all this happen. He could have got them out earlier. He could have driven her himself. But he was so eager to, because he thought he was in control, because he thought he had the evidence, because he thought he was, he thought he was going to, play the hero, and he thought he was going to solve this case, and nothing fucking went at all like he thought it was supposed to.
Yeah, it's all gone. Yeah, totally.
Basically he made Cross's victory possible, really, in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which just adds to the horrific nature of this movie. It's, that heroism does not work here.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? This is one of those, like, it's not always going to work out. It's that, like, hero's journey, hero story. Like, no, not all the time. Sometimes the bad guys just win, and that's literally what we have here. Now, Escobar drops the charges. He's like, just go home.
Yep.
Like, forget it. Just go home. Like, because he realizes that Jake's a good guy.
He says to his employees, get him out of here.
Yeah.
Take him home. Get him the fuck out of him. He says, I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah.
He says, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And then you get the immortal line from his co-worker, forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown.
Yeah.
Which is so that came from the writer was talking to a copper, and the cop said, oh, I used to work in Chinatown. He says, oh, what was it like? He says, what did you do there? And he said, literally nothing. He said, you did fuck all in Chinatown. He said, because Chinatown is, it's got its own language. He said, they do things differently. He says, and you could never tell whether you were helping someone or helping commit a crime. He said, so you did as little as possible. It was like an unknowing, place that just nothing went how it should. Nothing was simple. And that's why that came up. That's why it was forget it, it's Chinatown. It's become the almost no-win situation. It's just how shit happens.
Yeah. So that's Chinatown, and like I said, quite a shocking film, and still shocking to this day when you learn the true conspiracy and you get to that shocking end. It is almost like it's gritty and nasty in places all the way through. But it's that last 20 minutes or so, maybe even 15 minutes, it just, oh my God.
It's got
it's such a turn.
A more horrific ending than most horror movies.
I agree. It really does. It is a horrific ending.
It wasn't the original ending either. It was originally it was going to be that Cross at least got his comeuppance. I think Evelyn still died, but
right,
he managed to get. And Polanski was like, no, I want this, this ending. And they, him and Tang got into many arguments about this, the changing of the ending. And Tang was adamant that it should have had a happy ending. And then years later, he finally said, no, actually, Polanski was right.
He was right. Yeah.
He was right. It needed that
final kick.
Full end, that final fucking kick.
Yeah. Put the boot in right at the end. Yeah. It's a fantastic movie, and it's held up wonderfully. I'm really glad we covered this one, because it like Jurassic Park, it is a film I hadn't watched for a long time, and I really enjoyed revisiting this and seeing that it's held up and is just as shocking now as it was when I first watched it.
And have you ever seen Rango?
No.
So the cartoon Rango, it has similar beats to this. Basically, the Johnny Depp character turns up at this small town that has like water problems and stuff, and the mayor of the town is this sort of like tortoise who is voiced by Ned Beatty, and he literally is Noah Cross.
Oh my God, really?
All of his, the way he dresses, his mannerisms, the way he talks, it's literally just Noah Cross. And there's this whole conspiracy about the water, moving the water around, and it's basically like a Western version of this, which is really funny. It works really well, and I would recommend watching Rango. It's a really fun movie.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I've seen it. I've seen it around. I've never watched it. So
give it a go. It's fun. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
I think it's one of those movies that I've heard a lot of people don't like it because it's really grungy.
Right.
It's everything in the. I heard some ladies talking about it once, and they were basically saying, I hate that movie because everything is disgusting in it. There are no pretty animals. Every animal is horrible. It's all dirty, and I think it's got that sort of reputation as being a sort of movie, not a pretty cartoon.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are put off from it because of the way it looks, and I think that just adds to how great it is.
Yeah, well, it makes it quite unique, doesn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is a really fun movie. I like it a lot.
But in any case, for once, despite actually, I feel like we've done a pretty thorough talk through this film. But despite that, we've actually, for once, done it early. We're shorter than the actual film, which doesn't always happen. So,
well, it's a 2-hour movie.
It's 2:10, I think.
Pacing is very sort of leisurely.
It flows wonderfully.
But I don't. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's dragging or anything. It moves.
Feels like a long film. But it doesn't feel boring or drag, and I don't really feel like there's anything you can cut out of this film. Like it's all really necessary, I think. And it's all, everything is everything's paid off. The whole mystery is great. It's a really, really solid film. On every level. Any final thoughts on Chinatown?
No, just
that it's good.
it's a fantastic movie, which with a shocking conclusion that is not going to be for everybody.
No, definitely not.
Don't go into this movie expecting an easy, nice, fun time with.
If you're feeling depressed and you want a fun movie, this is not it.
Yeah, that's not going to happen here. If you want to see a beautifully crafted, beautifully acted
tragedy,
then this is it. This is the movie for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we will be back next time with our, usual review fare. But until then, stay safe, take care, and we'll catch you next time.